Welcome back to Murder in the Black. It is your host, Steph. I am so happy to be back with you guys. Dare I say, thrilled? And the reason why is because this will be released on my birthday. In my 5 years of podcasting, I have never been able to share an episode with you guys on my actual birthday. It either comes before or after. But we're here, y'all. And I just have to say, I am so happy to be able to share an episode with you guys. More than that, I'm happy that you guys always tune in with me weekly. Y'all always tapped in, sending me articles, recommendations, all the things. So let's celebrate today. Let's go ahead and get into our true crime case. Grab your coffee if it's the morning, your lemonade if it's the afternoon, but most certainly grab your wine if it's the evening. Either way, let's get into it. Our true crime case today takes place in Philadelphia, and I have entitled this case The Queen of Track. Shilie Turner was born on March 15th, 1975, in Philadelphia. She was the second of three daughters, all of whom were raised by their mother, Vivian King. Vivian was a former track star who did not continue her legacy in sports beyond secondary school, although she had enough success to go beyond. So her daughter, Shealy, chose to follow in her mother's footsteps and began participating in track, joining the Mount Carmel Baptist Church team. As Shealy and her sisters grew up, Vivian developed a close relationship with Clarence King, which evolved into a romantic partnership. Following this, Vivian and her children moved in with Clarence, and together they welcomed another daughter. Y'all, talk about a whole bunch of girls in one household, but they tackled it. Over time, Vivian struggled with alcoholism, which affected her relationship with Clarence. Although they continued to share a household, they transitioned from romantic partners to just living together as roommates and trying to effectively co parent their children. Now, for Shealy, when she picked up her mother's sport, she was dedicated and she excelled in her athletic pursuits, particularly in running. Now, she went on to join William Penn High School track team where she competed in several different running competitions. She was in cross country and then she did sprints and middle distance events. Now, the William Penn girls track team consistently achieved high state rankings and facilitated college opportunities for several athletes. So, for Shealy to be accepted onto the team just represented how much of a top athlete she was, even in her freshman year. Now, she notably went on to break the record for the 800-meter race. Her long stride and impressive speed set her apart from her competitors. Among her contemporaries, just to put this into focus, was Marion Jones, who also was a part of the graduating class of 1993, as was Shealy. This just highlights the caliber of athletes during this period. Marion Jones was her peer, and we know how amazing she was at the peak of her career. We're not going to talk about the debacle that ensued, but y'all get what I'm saying. Now, as Shealy began her college application process in her senior year, she harbored aspirations to compete on the Olympic level. So she had several different things that she needed to do, not just compete on the collegiate level, but eventually she would have to make that transition into training for the Olympics. Now, she received several offers, but amongst the ones that she was considering the most was Clemson and Auburn University. Ultimately, she selected Clemson to further both her academic and athletic goals. Shealy distinguished herself through exceptional talent and unwavering dedication. I mean, her accomplishments earned her widespread respect and admiration, not just there in the city of Philadelphia, but also beyond. But you would think that would go to her head a little bit. Maybe she would think she was that girl. And although she did know how good she was, she remained very approachable and humble throughout her entire high school career. And she wasn't just the top athlete, she was also viewed as a leader. She demonstrated a strong sense of commitment to her team, and she wanted to set an example that the collective objective at the William Penn's girls track team was to achieve success. Now, Shealy was raised in a family that obviously valued athletic achievement, as evidenced by that if you were ever go over to her house at the time, it was filled with medals and trophies that she received over the years. Now, while Vivian attained her own success in track and field, Shealy's parents were limited in support that they could offer. And a lot of that had to do with their commitment of providing for the family. And I don't want to move away from that too quickly because Shealy did have some disappointments about her family not being supportive and not showing up to her track meets. But I would say that towards the beginning of her career, it was sorrowful not to have that support from home. However, as time went on, she grew to just understand that this is just the way that it is. And I want to continue to do well. And although I don't have their support here, I know that they love me, and that's enough to go forward. But the support that she did have was that of her track coach, Tim Hickey. Tim Hickey, in my opinion, was overly qualified to be coaching at the secondary level. He was definitely at the collegiate level of coaching and could have went on to coach for several different universities and colleges, but instead he chose to focus his expertise on nurturing the young athlete who needed guidance at the secondary level. He maintained a very disciplined approach. And one thing that worked in his formula was he wanted to equip the girls for success. Now, for all members of the William Penn track team, athletics represented a vital route to higher education. And he proved through this model of equipping them for success that that could translate into them getting a scholarship and that becoming the vehicle to getting the higher education they needed. And without sports, they may not have that opportunity. He would often be that guiding light for Shealy. And when she did need support, she often found that in Coach Hickey. Now, during Shealy's senior year, she was fast tracked to going to Clemson, and she was well on her way to going to the Olympics as she desired. But it was right at the peak of track season when she met a guy. I know what you're thinking, but it happens, right? And his name was Sean Williams. He had recently transferred to the school during the second semester. He was a newbie, and him and Shealy hit it off right from the start. And this marked a significant period in her final year. January 17th, Shealy had just competed in 800-meter race. She did fabulously. She finished her 800-meter race first place in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. I mean, the girl was fast. And she decided after that race that she wanted to take a break from track, let her hair down, and relax. So she asked her mother once she got home if she could go to a party with her best friend in Center City in downtown Philly. Her best friend was Andrea McCall, and she lived just across the street. Knowing that she knew Andrea and her mother, Vivian decided to allow Shealy to go. And she also told her mom that she had a track meet the next morning and she would just go to the track meet and come home the following day. Once her mother said yes, Shealy goes to her room, grabs her bag, and quickly makes her way over to Andrea's house. Upon arriving, she tells Andrea, "Hey girl, listen, let me give you the real 411. I told my mom I was going to go to a party with you, but really, I'm going to go see my boyfriend, Sean. And I might be home late, but I'm going to come back here and spend the night with you because I have a track meet in the early morning tomorrow that I need to be at school for." Now, the very next day was January 18, 1993, which was MLK Day. And although campus was closed due to the holiday, Shealy still had a track meet that she had to participate in. And By now, we should know that Shealy was very disciplined when it came to track. So, of course, Andrea, being the good friend that she is, decides, yes, girl, I'll be your cover story, but what can really go wrong? And let's face it, when you're a teenager and you have a whole cover story, you more than likely have done this before. So nothing's going to happen this time, right? And that's what Andrea thought. But the next day, when Coach Hickey and the other teammates arrived to stretch and prepare for the track meet, Shealy didn't show up. So, of course, Coach Hickey asked her teammates, did they know where she was? Was she running late? Did she convey a message to them? And her teammates didn't have a clue. The track meet came and went, and still Shealy didn't show up. And this was beyond unusual for Shealy. She loved track and field. She was dedicated to it. One of her teammates decided that she was going to go to Shealy's house to inquire to see if maybe Shealy got sick or maybe there was a family emergency. When she knocks on the door, Shealy's mother, Vivian, answers. She gives her the whole rundown, how Shealy didn't come to the track meet. And Vivian regurgitates the story that Shealy informed her. Her mother is shocked that Shealy did not show up to the track meet. And her teammate is also shocked because this isn't like Shealy. For the rest of that day, family and friends try to see if anybody has talked to Shealy, but no one has. And by January 19th, Vivian decided to call and file a missing persons report for Shilie Turner. Police came and made an official report to get all the details surrounding Sheily's disappearance. That's when Vivian once again repeated the story about Shealy going to the party with her best friend, Andrea McCall, that lived across the street. And so investigators already knew they had a really good place to start. It was just across the street. And when they talked to Andrea, she gave them the additional information that they needed. It was determined that Shealy's last place to at least go was a planned visit to see her boyfriend, Sean. Once they relayed this information to Shealy's mother, Vivian was frustrated and surprised to hear that her daughter had a boyfriend. I mean, that wasn't even on her bingo card. Vivian was a very strict parent. By the books, you can't have a boyfriend until this age. I need to know the list of things that you have to do. That's the type of parent she was. So she was very shocked that Shealy was disobedient and did something totally different than what she said she was going to do. Now, having tracked down Shealy's last movements, investigators bring Sean down to speak to him about the disappearance of Shealy. Sean was very cooperative. He claimed that the last time he saw Shealy was Sunday. He was surprised to find out that she was missing because he had no idea. Now, you guys keep in mind, this is the 90s. We didn't have cell phones. Nobody was necessarily calling to see if you got home okay. All the things that we do in terms of safety precautions now, it just wasn't a thing. According to Sean, Shealy arrived at his house at 9 p.m. on Sunday evening. They sat down, had dinner with his parents. He introduced Shealy to some of his family. And before they knew it, it was a lot later than what they thought. Shealy told him that she didn't realize how late it was. She needed to get home because she did have a track meet the next morning. Sean decides to walk her to the bus, and he said that's the last time that he saw her. He claims he didn't know if she had mentioned anything to her mother. It was simply a planned visit, and he didn't have much information outside of that. He only assumed that she made it home okay. Now, Sean was the last person to see her, and investigators have to check out his story. They were able to verify that he left his house around 1:30 a.m., and they were able to speak to the bus driver, and he substantiated that Sean did indeed walk her to the door of the bus, but he didn't get on. Sean also took a polygraph test in which he passed. Now, he was cleared, but there was still no Shealy. The bus route didn't go directly to Shealy's home, and the bus driver claimed that he let her out 6 blocks away from where her house was. Now, it was early morning. Once she arrived, it had to be around 2:30, 3 o'clock. But where was Shealy? Did someone abduct her? Did someone murder her on the way home? I mean, she was just 6 blocks away. I don't have an idea what the neighborhood was like during this time in the 90s that she lived in. However, I don't think I have to even know that to know that it's very dangerous for anybody, especially a woman, to walk alone in the early mornings, regardless of how safe or unsafe your neighborhood is. It's just dangerous. So investigators are scratching their head. They have no idea where Shealy is. And all of the leads up into this point seem to have gone completely cold. This news of a beloved track star gone missing shocked the entire community of Philadelphia. And Shealy's story, it made front news. We often talk about here on Murder in the Black how there are a lot of our cases that go unsung, if you will, or go unsaid. They don't get the attention of popular media. But when media does get it right, I want to make a point to always give several hand claps to that because sometimes they do get it right. And in this case, they did. And I think that had a lot to do with Shealy's popularity within the community, but for whatever reason, they responded accordingly. Friends and family canvassed the area, made flyers, and so did investigators. Vivian also would appear on various media outlets locally to keep Shealy's name on the tip of the community's mind. By February 20th of 1993, a man was walking his dog in Fairmont Park. There, he found a body wrapped in a tarp. The body was partially frozen and was slightly decomposed. The news traveled to peers and family, and everyone hoped that it wasn't Shealy. Sadly, it was later revealed that it was 17-year-old Shilie Turner. The community, family, friends were shocked. Who was responsible for killing Shealy? When they conducted the autopsy, there was no sign of sexual assault. She was beaten and had multiple gunshot wounds to her head, chest, and neck, and one shot to her hand. The shots in her hands suggest that she was trying to defend herself when she was killed. She was shot at close range, and it was believed that whoever killed her knew her. They found 3 caliber bullets, which implied she was dumped at the park, as well as killed there as well. The case turned from a missing persons case, then over to the homicide unit. A new set of investigators were placed on the investigation, and they had to re-interview everyone that they spoke with before. So they did. Vivian's mother indicated to the homicide unit that she thought her daughter's relationship with Tim Hickey could have been inappropriate and that they should investigate Hickey because he might have had something to do with her daughter's murder. Investigators, unsure if he had anything to do with it, needed to follow protocol. They needed to see if there was any evidence there that suggested there, at the very least, was an inappropriate relationship that existed between Hickey and Shealy. Hickey's life was solely surrounded by track. He was one of those people who was transfixed with the sport and making his students better. He lived, he breathed track. Many people found that to be creepy anyway, but when you know a little bit about the history of William Penn High School, it was a predominantly Black high school. So to have this white man be so invested in a group of majority Black athletes already seemed to be a little, is something offbeat. But as we know, sometimes it's not always as it seems. The police had to vet the relationship, and Hickey admitted that although Shealy was his star athlete, he was only her coach and a mentor, nothing else. He said that she was a leader on and off the track team, and the girls admired her. But he gave them some new information. He said that often Shealy would confide in him that her life at home was very troubled. And she mentioned that she had several fights with her mother. There was a contentious relationship that exists between both of them. He also told investigators that on the day of her disappearance that he was with a group of friends and he was nowhere near her neighborhood or had anything to do with her disappearance. Cops searched his van and his house and they checked out his alibi and it checked out and they were able to clear Tim Hickey of any involvement in the murder of Shealy. And although it's somewhat comforting to know that at least these initial suspects are being cleared by investigators, it's still very troublesome for a person like us who's reviewing the case because it doesn't give us who did it, but someone is still responsible. Andrea McCall, Shealy's best friend, comes forward to police and claims that she saw Clarence wearing the jacket that Shealy was wearing on the night she disappeared. Police, doing their due diligence, go and tries to follow up on this lead. They pull Clarence in for questioning, and he informed that he simply grabbed a jacket that was closest to the door to go on about his way, and that he didn't have anything to do with Shealy's disappearance or murder. He loved Shealy. He informed investigators that on the night in question, he was at home asleep. They confirmed his alibi, and once again, we're at ground zero, folks. Now, the funeral for Shealy took place on February 27th, and during the funeral, her boyfriend, did to show camaraderie, attempted to show a semblance of we are both grieving this loss together. And he attended the funeral. And one of the first things that he did was to try to give Vivian a hug. But in a very public way, she refused the display of affection. And many people at this time, not just Vivian, but other people in the community blame Sean because although he was cleared by investigators, he was the reason, according to others, that she was out in the first place. And he was depressed. He had so much guilt that he was the reason why she was out. And did he do all that he could? And he really felt like he didn't. He was riddled with guilt. And as a result of public scrutiny, in his last year of high school, he simply dropped out. It was noticed at the funeral that Vivian King didn't seem to be the grieving mother that most would expect. You guys are true crime sleuths. You know you can't put too much stake in people's emotions and how they react. I mean, we have the emotions that we expect, but sometimes that doesn't make it odd at all. It just makes people different. After the funeral, many people in the community were committed to getting this case solved. And one of the people who were leading the charge, if you will, was a radio personality named Mary Mason. And she wanted to use her platform to bring awareness to the case so that they could get more information. So she asked Vivian King to come on her show to elicit more awareness about her daughter's case. And this was something that Vivian had done in the past. The award for information regarding Shealy's case was $6,000. And Mary was one of the people that championed that award amount being increased to $25,000, which it ultimately was. Now, Mary and Vivian talk on air about the case, who Shealy was, and the person ultimately that Vivian lost. But it was the conversation that occurred off air that really made Mary begin to believe that something in the water, well, it just wasn't clean. Because Vivian began to describe details of the crime scene at Fairmount Park. She even described how Shealy looked at the time of her death. She said something like her teeth were glistening in the moonlight when she died, and she must have been cold. Just statements that only a person who was either at the crime scene knew or who was at the murder would know. When the interview concluded and they wrapped it up with a bow, Mary Mason went down to Philadelphia PD and began to express her suspicions about Vivian's account during her time on the radio. She said Vivian knows more than what she's telling you because the thing she was saying it didn't seem right. Now, Vivian was the type of person who always wanted to keep up appearance to the public. However, that need to be perceived as normal and the ever-grieving parent, well, that began to cause cracks to show. Because as I already said, people were already kind of scratching their head when it came to Vivian when they saw her at Shealy's funeral. But when Mary Mason had that conversation with Vivian off air, then more chatter began to happen inside of the community. And on March 6th of 1993, Vivian started to hear some of those whispers. And she decided that she wanted to clear some things up. She went down to the police station to talk to them. And while there, the police, now with their own suspicions of not just what Mary Mason said, but also what Coach Hickey said about the contentious relationship that he was told about through Shealy, was on their mind. They decided to have this conversation with her. And initially, what Vivian said was, the media is hounding me. I need you guys to put this to rest, keep the media off my back. And I also want to clear up any rumors that may be out there about me. And so the police, they really played the role very well. And they said, well, you know what? We've heard of some of those rumors too. But if you really want to put the rumor mill to bed, just take a polygraph test. And so she acquiesced. But she flunked the polygraph test. And after intense interviews back and forth with detectives, they told her, just tell the truth. What happened? What took place? And Vivian did tell them a story, indeed. Now, Vivian King by trade was a CNA, and she spent most of her time when she wasn't working, drinking, or partying. This left Shealy to take care of her younger sister. And she was doing the mothering for her mother. And Shealy and Vivian would often get into conflict with each other. They have this contentious relationship because Shealy felt like, I'm being the parent, you're not, you're drinking. And her alcoholism really did a number, not just on her relationship with Clarence, but on her overall relationship with her children. On the day of Shealy's disappearance, in the early morning, Vivian was up drinking some corn liquor. Now, you guys have to tell me what corn liquor is. I mean, treat me like I'm a baby and break it down for me. I've never heard of corn liquor. Moonshine, but corn liquor. Is it made in the same way? I was just like, she was really out here drinking. Because that just sounds rough and tough to me. Okay. She was up drinking some corn liquor. She was drunk. And Shealy came into the door. And she said when Shealy came home in the early hours, she's wondering, why are you here? Why do you feel like you can come in my house so late? And she then began to insist that Shealy could no longer live at their house. So she tells Shealy, I'm about to pack you up and I'm taking you down to the juvenile hall because you're going to stay with them. You can no longer stay with me. I'm going to get you locked up. As Shealy moves to her bedroom to pack her things, Vivian tells her, no, everything that you have right now is what you're going to have when you go down to juvenile hall. Now get yourself together. We're going in a car. She moved her into the direction of the car opening the front door. But little did Shealy knew her mom had a revolver in her pocket. They get in the car, and before they know it, Shealy's on the road with her mother, expecting to go to the juvenile hall. But her mother passes it up. Of course, Shealy remarks, where are we going? And Vivian sits there in silence. Finally arriving at Fairmount Park, where she drags Shealy out of the car and begins to pistol whip her. Eventually, she begins shooting her in all the places that I mentioned, in her head, in her neck, in her hand, eventually killing her. She then wraps her in a tarp, and then she claims that she simply went back to the house and went to sleep. After telling investigators the story, she begins to laugh. And when they ask her why she shot her, she says, well, I lost my mind. She went from being the grieving mother to being the monster that no one ever wants to find. They arrested Vivian King for first-degree murder, and they conducted a search of her home. They didn't find Shealy's jacket or the murder weapon, and in October of 1993, she went to trial and claimed that the confession that investors got from her was coerced because she was interviewed for over 15 hours. However, the judge allowed the confession to be used, and in May of 1994, the trial lasted for 4 weeks, and the jury deliberated for 6 hours and found her guilty of the lesser charge of third-degree murder. She was sentenced to 10 to 20 years. However, she only ended up serving 10 of those years and was let out on probation, which by this time, she has finished. She is now living in Philadelphia. Of course, many people speculate, why did Vivian kill her daughter? Many people say that Vivian was jealous of her daughter. She was jealous of the shine that she was getting because she surpassed her mother in her athletic abilities. And maybe Vivian just could never measure up. And as a result, she killed her. Before we get into our takeaway, I want to mention to you guys a couple of points that I feel like you should know that I didn't include in our original case. Investigators hit a dead wall in this case. Once they figured out that Sean, Shealy's boyfriend, was cleared and they knew that she got off the bus by herself, let out 6 blocks away from her neighborhood, they hit a dead end. And they really were trying to get this case solved. They really wanted to bring Shealy back home. And so police did something that's not uncommon for investigators. They decided to seek out the help of a psychic. They brought in Valerie Morrison. They took Valerie to Vivian's home. They brought her in, told Vivian everything that they were doing. And the first start of that process is they showed Valerie pictures of Shealy. Then she asked to just walk around the house, eventually landing in Shealy's room. And she decided to lay on Shealy's bed. Now, stay with me. This is just all a part of the process for Valerie. That's when she claimed to start to feel Shealy's presence. And when she began to speak, it was no longer Valerie speaking, but in fact, it was Shealy. So, of course, investigators are starting to ask questions. And the first thing that Shealy says is, I have my night clothes on, Mama. Vivian is also in the room, right? They begin to say, where are you? And she states that she was shaking and freezing, and she was somewhere where the snow was falling, and it was cold. Her feet were so cold. Now, the voice added that she was near trees, but all she could see was darkness. And as investigators are hurriedly trying to write down this information, Valerie, who is now in the presence of Shealy, grabs Vivian's arm, saying, Mommy, tell them where you put me. Mommy, tell them where you put me. Shealy's voice also said that she was near a cross and there was water nearby. And when Valerie grabbed Vivian's arm, saying, Mommy, tell them where I am, Vivian grew angry and kicked the detectives out of her house as well as Valerie. And back in the car, Valerie told police Vivian killed her daughter and buried her at Fairmont Park by a tree. And there's some water nearby, and there has to be a cross or something in that nearby area. But I'm telling you, that woman has killed her daughter. Now that you know the way that the case ended, don't you think it's interesting that police didn't follow that lead, at the very least didn't go and check on the lead. I just think it's interesting that they didn't follow that up. And you might be saying, okay, Steph, why are you sharing this at the end of the case? Well, there have been no investigators that have talked about this case in a public forum. So I'm not able to tell you exactly why they didn't follow up on that lead, why they didn't check that lead out. But I just think since it was their idea to recruit a psychic, why wouldn't you then listen to the psychic? Because the psychic was correct. She was found slightly frozen and decomposed in a tarp, which was a dark place. She was found near a body of water in Fairmont Park. Y'all, you can't make this stuff up if you tried. You just can't. Takeaway. My takeaway will include a spoiler. If you have not watched The Unknown Number, The High School Catfish, don't listen to this, guys, because I'm going to ruin it for you. The parallel that I found in Shilie Turner's case and in Unknown Number, The High School Catfish, is that in both of these stories, the villain is the mother. And while you can say, well, Steph, Vivian King killed her daughter, and in Unknown Catfish, she didn't kill her daughter. No, she didn't kill her daughter from the physical standpoint, but emotionally and in terms of her childhood, she killed her daughter. And I often say, if you can't trust your mama, who can you trust? But seriously, you would think, and I know this world is fallen and there's a ton of things that should be that ain't, but on a very cellular level, you're connected with your mom right from the beginning. And to know that your mother can be the villain in your story, and as often is, and even if she doesn't physically kill you, to know that there are people who are out here that are emotionally hurt by their parent grieves me in a way that I cannot even begin to explain. While people are trying to figure out why did Vivian King kill her daughter, I'm just like, why was that even an option ever? There is never a good reason why you would kill your daughter. Just like there's never a good reason in the case of Unknown Number, the catfish, on why you would be bullying your daughter for over a year. I mean, there aren't good reasons for these things, guys. Also, one of the burning questions that I have is if Shealy told her mom that she was going to spend the night with Andrea, and Andrea had that understanding as well, and she got home around 3:00, why didn't she just go to Andrea's house? Why did she return back to her mom's house? Was it that late that she felt like she couldn't go to Andrea's house? That is a disconnect. And that's the only thing I can come up with that makes sense for me. Because I think, dang, if she just didn't go to mother's house that day, it would have been all right, at least temporarily. I don't know. You guys, let me know your thoughts when it comes to this case. You know I want to hear what you got to say. Until next time, friends, this is Murder in the Black. I'll see you next week.